OKFM 101.7.
Yo, afei mami musa die we budget here ready ye. Ba ko a ebeto mu a enne na me pen krofo ma o maka won sema it seems people have been silent on it. Na say collapse banks a collapse here, Capital Bank, Heritage Bank, the Unibank, Unicredit, baby. Ewie ya aba budget ni say yen Ghana for no ye be tax yen to pay for near na course one. Wabra yenim say nipa bi kura to say Reverend Mensa Otabel mu. Then board chairman of the Capital Bank, you know. Sika Bank of Ghana for the man 600 million no. Wano kwaji bi as Otabel and associates. E the ICGC no kwaji busian bi. E we kwaji busian. Omo ne nam ho. Dr. Pago sindu mu die nyina egu ho. Ye ne ye ba betua. Sa die we agya mo na mu nim oman mu nsam. Entiase be ni wo mu.
Come. You see, one more banks no more can support the liquidity support near the more supply no any idea. You see, a state's responsibility to take them on and to ensure say we recoup the money. A state's no responsibility, and the state has failed to do that. But the entire banking sector problem now you pay here just 9 billion Ghana cedis to resolve the problem. So what I say, if the banks are no more liquidity crisis or more, problems and challenges with their books, all those banks could have been sustained. The government could have taken control, just invest 9 billion into those banks, taking over the management of those banks, to ensure that the banks continue to operate and be able to serve the people and what have you. The entire problem in the banking sector was just 9 billion. Promise, recommendations here, are buying a share. That problem in our financial sector, no, we say, the kind, now a systemic problem. Yet also, there are issues of management. That is, one managing banks, were mismanaging the funds of the customers. So what do? You catch a bank, then invest the 9 billion into these banks as equity. Take partial or full control of the banks. Run the banks so the banks are stable. When the people are ready to ensure proper management of their books, and they are able to meet the money that you are invested in it, then they repay the money and they get back their bank. So for example, bank which is Unibank, say a bank we invested maybe 3 billion on them. You took control of the bank for let's say 1 year, you stabilize the bank. If the owner wants the bank back, you calculate the 2 or 3 billion a bank invested in it. He pays back the 3 billion or bring an investor to take over the shares. The bank keeps its operations. Customers continue to do their business and what have you. But we did something to save the bank. In 2007, when the global financial crisis happened, the U.S. government did not collapse the banks. They provided what we call a bailout and ensured that the banks continue to operate. That is what our recommendations were. A bank said there be. Oh yeah. And we call Bob 21 billion. Or the big banks, Kwame, 21 billion, no, Bosnian in the bank was free buyer. Parliament did not approve any loan for the payment of the banking sector cleanup debt. We don't know where that money comes from as we speak. We don't know how those monies have been dispersed. But Kwame, the critical problem is that when you go to the banks, apart from I think there's three banks. I think Beach Capital, Kofi Amoabe Bank, UT Bank, and then I think 1 or 2 other banks that were totally liquidated. All the other banks were consolidated into one entity called CBG. Yes. Collapse banks, into 5 banks that went down in 2018. all those 5 banks were consolidated into one entity called Consolidated Bank Ghana, CBG. Kwame, there's a difference between liquidating a bank and merging a bank. Kwame, when you liquidate a bank, like UT Bank, it was liquidated. Into every customer of UT Bank, or call UT Bank, or fill a form, let me say in the then the receiver pays off the deposit. That is liquidation. But when you merge the bank, like what happened to the Capital Bank, Unibank, and what have you, those 5 banks that were merged, at the chain, all the customers went back to CBG to transact their business. So government did not pay them off. Government did not pay them off. So what I said, they went back to CBG to transact the businesses that they were transacting in their respective banks. It's coming. 21 billion now buying to Akoji banks, you know. And the all tax is 5% as banking sector cleanup tax, you know. 21 billion, no more.
Aha! Abanya Koji 21 billion. 21 billion, one share the source of it. And now what the Abegu Bank no are resources.
A point of fast of this basis.
Okay.
I don't know who were the recipients of those money. Because Michelle said the banks were merged. When the banks
but I know they are now the check customers Nibika.
Come in and say, see, when Omega banks to form CBG, you didn't pay the customers off.
No.
The customers went to CBG to transact their business.
Some of the amount were translated into bonds.
Yes, and given to them. But when it comes to the banks, you transferred all those selected assets and liabilities to CBG. So if I was a customer of Unibank, my deposit and investment and everything was transferred onto the books of CBG. So I just go to CBG instead of going to Unibank to transact business. That's all. You did not pay me off. It's 21 billion. Almost a year then.
A point pa.
Before they would tell us to pay taxes to repay the loan, they must show us what they did with that 21 billion. Oh my,
now they say crowd they say you did BB abeyo say a parliament appropriate budget no nim sa na my omode be proposal so no dey dey one be say dey agye you because me mentia say men say otabel enkoji sika won ne nkrofo enkoji sika kodi na me Ghana ni na ya beje tax I don't know who so no.
You see, that is a big problem. That should tell you, say, there is something wrong somewhere. There is something wrong somewhere. Albino is complicit in all this. Because, as we speak, the microfinance and savings and loans customers now, only about 30 or 40% of the customers have been paid. Okay? In fact, as for the normal investment companies and other family management companies, in chair of banks, so it's only UT Bank and I think a few other banks, and they were totally liquidated and the customers were repaid. But the other remaining banks were all consolidated to form CBG into one bank, and they went to continue their business there, and they are buying anybody off. And before they come to tax us, they must show us what they did with the 21 billion. Oh, 21 billion, no. They move 5% my way, they remove 10% my way, they remove 1% my way. They must show us. Otherwise, Parliament must not approve this new tax on their core. How can you ask the banks who are undergoing difficulties? They say, in global pandemic here, a lot of people have lost their jobs. Well, household income reduces, savings reduces. The banks rely on the savings of the households to mobilize to give the SMEs. Now, what you are going to do is that you are going to tax the banks 5% as banking sector cleanup tax. the banks are going to transfer that 5% cost onto the consumers of banking services. When the charges of banking service are high, people automatically withdraw from banking service. So at the end of the day, you are going to reduce the number of people who are going to put their money in the banks. When the banks are not able to mobilize enough, they won't get money to support the SMEs and small businesses to create jobs for your people. So this is an extremely contractionary fiscal policy which government is trying to implement, and it's going to contract the economy further. It's going to create lots of jobs in a system or in the midst of this pandemic where a number of jobs are still being lost. So Kwame, I think I say, who advises the government? Some of these things, you need to say a lot of thinking goes into it, because common sense will tell you, say, when you charge the banks 5% banking sector cleanup tax, they will transfer it into the cost of transactions onto their customers. So, what do I do? Next month, me family take alcohol. But it's a better name pass. Yes, they go to bank no, and the banks ni boabo no the companies as Bosia. Nobody be a juma, nobody fa. You more from a school, juma mo musu ni juma ye. It is yan fa se kan go to banker. Banks no so yes kan fa ma companies ni mo from be a juma. So what you do is that you are creating further and further hardship, no unemployment. Who is so? What's that? Baller tax about? Yeah, we say your friend saying COVID-19 relief tax. Kwame, go across the world and see which country is taxing its people for COVID-19. Which country in the world is taxing its people for COVID-19? COVID-19 relief tax. Fuel also, what are the additional taxes ever to fuel also? We're increasing VAT flat rate by another 1%. We're increasing Kwame, again, I buy you free. What did you feel? They say you have two what they say is so pure water. So much to manako take you the 40%. One or more run a public toilet. And some but two public toilet from 50 pesos to 1 CD. Keska forces say by the end of the day and the umber 2 case come. And to Kwame, the ordinary Ghanaian on the street, or that story and power, only the impono or the car 5 cities. Because of Benum Su, or Beko toilet, or Befa car quajuma, or on your judgment, or the impo on your judgment or the car 5 cities. That's the ordinary downtrodden, ordinary Ghanaian on the street. Kwame, I want to be and I buy a person who I mean, Bonnie Benny, the Ayabino. Bonnie Benny.
Eja, me come akabem you ne nyame pa me pese me frɛ wo kyena na ya sa to asa nkomo no so ba ko ye eye fuel no ɛna ba ko nso so eye die ye kan se covid bre ye de ama ye electricity ne ye free ne water ye free a mate se awia ne ho abɛhyɛ mu a ye bɛgye tax wo ho e de akɔset sa det no enti pa cho wada ma ɛkya me frɛ wa no agye me so for sa nkomo mi ru yi
Kwame mejo so go
Mati, Medasi Baba Eja. Ora Mensa Thompson, Executive Secretary, ASEPA, the Natural K101.7. Patrol.
OKFM 101.7.